Welcome to Heartbreak Chronicles. The wheels of the shopping cart make a harsh, scuffing sound on the smooth floor. Ryan pushed his cart through the fresh produce section of the supermarket, mechanically tossing apples into the basket. It was always unusually quiet on Tuesday afternoons. He liked the quiet. No loud crowds, no boring pleasantries, and more importantly, no one to ask about his new marriage. Fate was like a mischievous clown, always punching you in the face when you were least expecting it. She was standing right in front of the tomato aisle. Maya, 10 years old. Her dark hair was cut short, no longer the long wavy locks she remembered. Simple jeans, blue sweater, empty fingers, no wedding ring. Time had left subtle marks on her face, but those green eyes were still the same, just with less of the same luster. Ryan's heart hit his chest hard. He could turn away and pretend he didn't see it. 2 years into their divorce, they'd managed to avoid each other in this not-so-small city but the feet felt like they were nailed to the ground. Maya, her head snapped up, her pupils contracting suddenly. The complexity of the expression that flashed across her face in that moment was heartbreaking shock, pain, and a hint of fear he couldn't read. Ryan, hi. Her voice sounded like it had been sandpapered. You look tired. Busy at work. He smiled to himself. It was true that he was tired. Exhaustion had consumed him like a tidal wave these past few weeks, but he didn't want to discuss his health with his ex-wife in the supermarket. I heard you remarried. She put down the tomato in her hand, her fingers trembling slightly. Yes. I hope she makes you happy. Before Ryan could respond, another shopping cart slid gracefully to his side. Found you, honey. Sophia's voice was as sweet as honey, her blonde ponytail perfectly tied behind her head. She took Ryan's arm and held up a box of tea. I found your favorite chamomile tea. Then she saw Maya. Oh, hello. The world seemed to freeze at that moment. Maya's face instantly lost all blood color, and she stared at Sophia as if she saw a demon crawling out of hell. Her lips were slightly open, but she couldn't make any sound. Sophia, this is Maya. Ryan introduced stiffly, my ex-wife. Maya, this is my wife Sophia. Sophia held out her hand, that professional smile still on her face. It's nice to finally meet you. But Maya had already backed away, knocking over the tomato display behind her. The bright red fruit tumbled to the ground like drops of congealed blood. I have to go. Her voice was barely audible as she turned and walked quickly away, leaving the loaded shopping cart alone in its place. Sophia bent down to pick up the tumbled tomatoes. That's weird. Is she always this rude? Ryan looked at Maya's back as she disappeared out the automatic door. In 12 years of marriage, he'd never seen her flee in such a panic. Not when his business was nearly bankrupt, not when her father died, not even during their most heated arguments. No, he said, she was never like that. The roar of chainsaws in the afternoon woodshop couldn't drown out the buzzing in Ryan's head. He mechanically sanded a dining room table, rushed for a client in Eagle. Usually, this repetitive work calmed him down, but not today. The look on Maya's face when she saw Sophia was etched before his eyes like a brand. That fear of recognizing something terrible. The phone vibrated at 6:30. An unfamiliar number, a text message. It's me, Maya. Got the number from your company's website. We need to talk. He stared at the screen for a full minute before replying. About what? Can't talk over the phone. Tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock, cafe on Fairview Street. I'm married. This isn't about us, Ryan. It's about her. About Sophia what? The phone suddenly rang. Maya's voice came through the receiver, strained and urgent. You don't understand who you married. What do you mean? I can't explain over the phone. Please, just meet. If I'm wrong, you'll never hear from me again. The phone hung up. Ryan sat in his truck for 20 minutes, staring at his phone. Maya had never been a drama queen. She'd asked for a handful of things in their marriage. Now this almost pleading tone disturbed him. When he finally walked into the house, Sophia was humming in the kitchen preparing dinner. The smell of roasting chicken filled the air. How was your day? She stood on her tiptoes to kiss his cheek. Fine. Busy. You seem distracted. Is it because you saw Maya today? Ryan scrutinized her face. The same warm brown eyes, the same easy smile. There was nothing out of the ordinary. This was the woman he'd married 6 months ago. A little bit. I can understand that. Divorce is hard, even when it's the best option. She took a mug out of the cupboard, poured in hot water, and put in a tea bag. Here, this will relax you. The steam from the chamomile tea rose in his hands. Sophia had been making this tea for him every night for the past month, saying it relieved stress. The doctor had also mentioned that stress might be the cause of his recent fatigue and heart palpitations. Thanks. He took a sip and set it aside. I'm going to take a shower. In the bathroom, Ryan splashed cold water on himself in the mirror. Dark circles under his eyes. Pale face. When had he gotten so gaunt? Back in the kitchen, Sophia was looking at him expectantly. Tea getting cold? She asked. Let it cool for a while. It works better when it's hot. There was a strange insistence in her tone. To satisfy her, he took another sip. She smiled, turned, and went back to cooking. That night, Ryan lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Beside him, Sophia breathed evenly and slept peacefully. Whenever he was about to fall asleep, his heart would beat wildly for no apparent reason, waking him up. At 3 in the morning, he gave up and walked into the studio. But instead of working, he just sat in his leather chair and stared out the window at the empty street. Thinking about Maya's words, about her fear when she saw Sophia, about his deteriorating health. The alarm went off at 7:15 in the morning. Ryan had only had 2 hours of sleep, but his mind was unusually clear, the kind of morbid wakefulness that comes from too much caffeine coupled with sleep deprivation. Sophia was already up, busy in the kitchen in her silk robe. You're up early, she said. I was just about to bring you coffee in bed. Couldn't sleep. Wanted to go to town for breakfast. Want me to make you something? Omelette. Toast. No need. She stepped closer and pressed her palm to his forehead. You've got a bit of a fever. Might be getting sick. I'm fine. You should be home resting. Got a client meeting at 9. Her hand slid to his chest and pressed right where his heart was. Your heart is beating so fast. It was indeed beating wildly, and had been for weeks. But he backed away. It's just stress. Got a Hendrix order due Friday. At least have a cup of tea. She turned toward the stove and poured in hot water. It'll ease the anxiety. Ryan watched her put the tea bag into the cup, watched her stir it twice clockwise, watched her add a full teaspoon of honey. It had been the same routine every morning for a month. Thanks. He took the cup and walked to the garage. I'll be back by 6. Drive safe. In the garage, Ryan set the teacup on the workbench and stared at the rising steam. The familiar scent of chamomile and honey. He lifted the cup to his lips, then stopped. Maya's voice echoed in his head. This isn't about us, it's about her. He thought of the look on her face when she saw Sophia yesterday, that fear of seeing a ghost. Thinking of his own recent exhaustion, heart palpitations, insomnia. Thinks of Sophia's insistence that he have tea every night. Ryan poured the tea into an empty paint can and sealed the lid. Then he caught water from the studio sink and added a drop of honey to stir. As he carried the cup through the kitchen, Sophia looked up from her phone. Feeling better? Much better. She flashed a smile. I knew it would help. The cafe was nearly empty at 8 in the morning. Ryan found Maya in the back corner, curled up in her booth at the card table as if she wanted to disappear. Seeing him approach, she looked up. Her eyes were red and puffy, and she looked like she'd been up all night. Thanks for coming, she said as he sat down across from her. Go ahead. She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. How long have you been married? 6 months. How long have you known each other? Met 8 months ago. She works as a consultant for Henderson Construction, new office building projects. I'm in charge of custom carpentry. She happened to show up while you were working? Ryan frowned. What do you mean? What do you know about her past? Enough. Grew up in Oregon, graduated from Portland State, did interior design, then moved into project consulting. Did she ever tell you she used to live here? No. Maya pulled a folded piece of paper from her bag and unfolded it on the table. It was a printed page from a scam alert website, and at the top was a headshot of a blonde woman who looked a lot like Sophia, only with shorter hair and different makeup. The name was Rebecca Vance. 10 years ago, Maya says, she approached me at the gym. Said she'd just moved here and didn't know anyone. I sympathized with her. Ryan studied the photo. The bone structure was indeed similar, but the expression was different, colder and harder. She asked a lot of questions about you. Maya continues, your business, our marriage. Asked if you were hiding assets from me, if there were accounts I didn't know about. You never mentioned any of this during the divorce. Because I was ashamed. Maya's voice choked. She manipulated me perfectly. I already felt alone and suspected our marriage was falling apart. She just deepened those suspicions, made me paranoid, made me think you were lying to me about everything. Ryan thought back to the last few months of their marriage, the endless arguments, Maya's sudden skepticism about his business finances, accusing him of hiding assets. At the time, he thought it was a midlife crisis and assumed it was the natural death of the marriage. After I left you, she disappeared, too, Maya says, until a few months later, when I saw this picture on a fraud alert website. She was arrested for defrauding the elderly, using multiple identities and specifically targeting vulnerable people. Why didn't you tell me? Tell you what? That I ruined our marriage by listening to a scammer? That I was too stupid to see through her? Tears streamed down her cheeks. I thought she was gone forever. Then I saw her with you yesterday, and I realized she planned this for 10 whole years. Ryan folded the paper and pushed it back. This woman doesn't look like Sophia. People change appearances, Ryan. Especially someone like this. Maya leaned forward. I'm telling you to be careful because you look awful. Because you're pale and tired and your hands are shaking. Ryan looked down at his hands. They were indeed shaking slightly. When did it start? Maya asked. Fatigue, racing heart? Stress. When exactly did it start? He thought back. About a month ago, right around the time she started making him tea every night. The realization hit him like a punch in the gut. He stared at Maya, searching her face for any sign of deception, any hint that this was calculated revenge. You think she's poisoning me? I think you need to lab test that tea. Ryan's cell phone vibrated. A text from Sophia. Hope your meeting went well. Don't forget to drink lots of water. You look a little dehydrated this morning. He shows the text to Maya. She reads it and turns even whiter. Oh my God, Ryan. She knows. Knows what? Knows you didn't drink your tea. 2 hours later, Ryan was sitting in the parking lot of Precision Health Labs with sealed cans of paint in the passenger seat. His friend Dave, who runs the testing facility, agreed to run a full toxicology test on the tea sample without asking any questions. The results will take 48 hours, Dave said. And you want to tell me why you're testing the tea? Not yet. Ryan stared at Sophia's text message on his cell phone. The implication was clear. She expected him to be dehydrated because she expected the tea to have done its job. But what if Maya was wrong? What if it was all just coincidence and paranoia? The phone rings and Sophia's name flashes on the screen. Hi, he said, picking up the phone. How was the meeting? Fine. You sound tired. Why don't you come home? I'll make you lunch. I have work to do. Ryan, you need to take care of yourself. You've been working too hard lately. There was genuine concern in her voice, the same concern that had made him fall in love with her 8 months ago. I'll be home by 6. I'll have your tea ready. The phone hung up. Ryan sat in the parking lot for another 10 minutes, trying to connect the woman on the phone with the criminal on Maya's printout. Then he started the truck and drove to the studio. He still had 48 hours to wait. For the next 2 days, Ryan continued the show. Each morning he took the tea Sophia made, pretended to take a few sips, then poured it out when she wasn't looking, repeating the same ritual every night. He watched her every move, looking for any sign of suspicion. Sophia was still the perfect wife, gentle, considerate, and concerned for his well-being. She would bring him lunch while he worked, would suggest he rest when he looked tired, and would massage his temples before bed. If it hadn't been for Maya's warning, if it hadn't been for that lab result that was about to be revealed, he would almost believe it was all a mistake. But his body wouldn't lie. Even if he stopped actually drinking tea, the toxins he'd accumulated earlier were still affecting him. Heart palpitations were still frequent, fatigue lingered, and the trembling of his fingers was sporadic. He began to notice more details. How Sophia always prepared his tea herself, how she always watched him take the first sip, how she looked disappointed when he said he didn't want it. The next night, Ryan stays late at the studio. He told Sophia he had an urgent order to catch up on and really just needed the space to be alone. Moonlight poured through the windows on the unfinished furniture, the grain of the wood standing out in the silvery glow. He thought back to 10 years ago. That was when Maya had started to become paranoid, started to question his every expense, started to suspect that he had someone on the outside. He thought it was her insecurities at work, thought it was because their relationship had faded. Arguments became more frequent and trust was gone. In the end, it was Maya who filed for divorce, saying she couldn't trust him anymore. In retrospect, it all made sense. Rebecca Vance, or whatever her real name was, had orchestrated everything. She'd studied their weaknesses, found the entry point, and then dissected their marriage with the precision of a surgeon. And now, she was back. As Sophia, as his wife. Ryan's fist slammed into the workbench, jarring the tools. Anger burned in his chest, not only because of where he was now, but because of all those lost years. If that woman hadn't intervened, he and Maya might have had a child long ago, might be planning a retirement trip, might be looking at the stars together one warm night. But anger was followed by fear. If what Maya said was true, if Sophia was really poisoning him, what was her ultimate goal? Money? His business was good, but not so good that it was worth spending 10 years planning a murder. Unless there was a bigger agenda. His cell phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was Dave. Can you come by tomorrow morning? Dave's voice was serious. Results are in person tomorrow. That night was extraordinarily long. Ryan lay beside Sophia, listening to her, even breathing and imagining the possibilities. Maybe the lab results would prove it was all a misunderstanding. Maybe Maya had mistaken him for someone else. Maybe he was just unwell from overwork. But deep down, he knew the truth. The look on Dave's face Thursday morning said it all. Digitalis glycosides, he said, getting right to the point, high levels. Ryan slumped in his chair, and even though he'd been prepared for it, the moment of confirmation sent him sky high. The stuff comes from the mullein plant, Dave went on to explain, affects heart rhythms and causes fatigue, dizziness, and confusion. It's hard to track when taken in small doses over a long period of time. Looks like a natural heart problem. Can it be fatal? At this concentration and a few weeks of regular dosing, you'll go into cardiac arrest. Dave paused. Ryan, this is attempted murder. You need to call the police. Not yet. What? Someone is trying to kill you. I need more evidence. Need to know who her accomplices are, where the money went, what her ultimate plan is. Dave shook his head. That's too dangerous. Can you detect how long it's been in my system? A hair sample will do. 20 minutes later, the results came back. 3 to 4 weeks, continuous dosing. It wasn't an accident, Ryan. Whoever poisoned me knew what they were doing. Ryan clenched his fists. 1 month. For a whole month. Instead of his wife's loving care, he drank a slow death every night. After leaving the lab, Ryan went straight to Maya. She was waiting for him at Riverside Park, feeding the ducks with a bag of breadcrumbs in her hand. Seeing the look on his face, she knew the answer. How much? She asked. Enough to kill me in a couple weeks. Maya's hands trembled as the crumbs scattered. God, I really hope I'm wrong. Tell me everything you can about Rebecca Vance. Every detail. Maya took a deep breath and began to tell that story. 10 years ago, in the spring, she had just started going to a newly opened gym. Rebecca approached her, saying she had just moved to the city and had no friends. They started working out together and having coffee together. Rebecca was always just right when she needed to talk. She was especially good at listening, Maya says, asking a lot of questions and acting like she cared. Now that I think about it, she was gathering information. What kind of information? Everything about you. Your hours, your clients, your income. She even asked if you had life insurance. Ryan felt a chill run down his spine. Life insurance? She said she was thinking about getting one for herself and wanted to know about it. I didn't think much of it at the time. And then what happened? Then she started telling some stories. About how her friend's husband hid his fortune, about how men cheat on their wives financially. She never said anything directly about you. But every time I left the gym, those thoughts were in my head. So you started to suspect me. Not immediately, but the seeds were planted. Whenever you worked late, I remembered the stories she told. Whenever you had dinner with a client, I wondered if it was something else. She created an echo chamber that amplified every doubt I had. Ryan remembers how Maya changed during that time. From a trusting wife to a suspicious stranger. He tried to explain, tried to prove his innocence. But the more he explained, the more Maya felt he was hiding something. What happened to her after the divorce? The day after I moved out, she texted that she was moving back to Portland. There was no contact after that. Until a year later, when I saw her wanted poster online. Why didn't you tell me right away? Maya lowered her head. Because I realized I was being used. Realized I ruined our marriage just by trusting a liar. How could I face you? So you chose to remain silent. I thought she wouldn't come back. I thought you'd meet someone better and start a new life. I never thought she'd approach you with another identity. Ryan stood up and paced back and forth by the river. The pieces of the puzzle were taking shape, a terrible, decade-spanning conspiracy. "I need your sister's help," he said. "Isn't Marley a forensic accountant?" "Yes. She's never liked Sophia." "Why?" "She said Sophia had the wrong look in her eyes. Said it was the way a hunter looks at his prey." Later that afternoon, Ryan sat in Marley's office and watched her fly through the computer. As a professional forensic accountant, Marley had amazing digging skills. "Unusual transactions over a 6-month period," she said, pointing to the screen, "are small and unnoticeable, but it adds up to quite a bit." "How much?" "What I've seen so far, at least 800,000. Ryan nearly jumped out of his chair. 800,000? How is that possible? Well-designed transfers. Each time within your normal business expenses, using your electronic signature. If you don't check closely, it looks like a normal material purchase or equipment maintenance expense." "Where were the transfers made?" "Several different companies. Pinnacle Holdings, Crestview Investments, Meridian Enterprises. All shell companies registered within the last 6 months." "Who registered them?" Marley pulled up more information. "Interestingly, the registrants are all different, but the addresses overlap. One of them is named Maddox Turner." Ryan remembered. He had overheard Sophia on the phone last week and mentioned the name. At the time, she thought he was at the studio. "Can you trace the final destination?" "Part of it can. Some of it's been transferred to offshore accounts, and it's hard to trace. But I found this." Marley pulled up another file. "A $2 million life insurance policy was purchased in your name 4 months ago. The beneficiary was Sophia." The blood froze in Ryan's veins. $2 million. Combined with the 800,000 stolen, it was truly worth 10 years of planning for a professional con artist. "I never signed this." Electronic signature. Same as those transfer authorizations. Marley leaned back in her chair. "Ryan, this is an elaborate financial crime plus murder. You need to call the police immediately. I need more evidence." "What more evidence do you need?" "Poisoning, stealing money, falsifying insurance. That's enough to put her away for life. I want to make sure she can't harm anyone else for the rest of her life." That night, Ryan acted more tired than usual. He yawned at the table and rubbed his temples. "Headache?" Sophia asked with concern. "It's hurt all day? Probably from looking at the computer too long. I'll make you a special cup of tea. Add some mint. It's good for headaches." Ryan watched her busy in the kitchen, moving with grace and precision. Without knowing the truth, anyone would think she was the perfect wife. "By the way," he said with feigned indifference, "I was wondering if I should get a life insurance policy." Sophia's hand gave a slight lurch, but immediately recovered. "Why did you suddenly think of that?" "Client mentioned it today. Said everyone should be covered." "Makes sense." She walked over with her tea. "But you haven't been in the best of health, so the premiums might be high." "Maybe. We'll talk about it when we're in better health." He took the cup of tea and noticed the way she stared at him. In that moment, he saw something in her eyes, not concern, but assessment, like calculating how much longer it would take. "Drink it while it's hot," she said. Ryan took a big sip, then another. Sophia's shoulders visibly relaxed. "I'm going to go lie down for a while," he said. "Maybe a nap will stop the headache." In the bedroom, Ryan immediately went into the bathroom and spit the tea into the toilet. He had become more and more adept at this deception, but he knew it couldn't go on forever. Sooner or later, Sophia would find out, and when she did, who knew what extreme measures she would take? He needed help. The next day, Ryan finds his old friend Jake. Jake ran a security company that specialized in security solutions for high-end clients. "I need surveillance installed in my home," Ryan said. "The hidden kind." Jake sized him up. "What's wrong?" Ryan told him everything. Jake grimaced as he listened. "I'm calling the police." "No, not yet. I need her to admit it herself." "Need irrefutable proof." "That's too dangerous. That's why I need your help." Jake was silent for a long time before finally nodding. "When's the installation?" "She goes to yoga every Tuesday and Thursday morning. 2-hour window." "That's enough. I'll install the best equipment. Audio, video, full coverage. The kitchen is the focus." "Understood. And, Ryan, if the situation gets out of hand, feel free to call me." "Will do." That weekend, Ryan began his plan. He reached out to his lawyer, Miles, a former prosecutor with a reputation for toughness. "It's attempted murder aggravated by grand larceny," Miles said after looking over the evidence. "But for a conviction, We need more direct evidence. Preferably her confession. That's why the surveillance. Even then, it has to be handled carefully. Evidence obtained illegally may be inadmissible. What if it's to stop a crime in progress? Miles thought for a moment. That's another matter. The rules are relaxed in cases of self-defense. That would be self-defense. Over the next few days, Ryan continued his act, but began to show more symptoms. He would suddenly cover his chest in front of Sophia, would pretend to be dizzy and need to hold onto a wall, and would show significant relief while drinking tea. Sophia's reactions were subtle, but Ryan now knew what to look for. Every time he showed discomfort, there was a flash of something in her eyes, not worry, but anticipation. Whenever he said he was feeling better, she'd advise him to rest and not work too hard. Maybe you should see a doctor, she said for the third time when Ryan decided to test the waters. Maybe. I'll make an appointment tomorrow. There's no need to rush. Her tone suddenly changed. You know, doctors just prescribe a bunch of useless drugs. Might as well keep drinking tea. Natural is always better. You're right. That night, Sophia added more stuff to his tea. Ryan saw her put at least 5 drops of liquid from a small brown vial. The dose was increasing. On Tuesday morning, Jake and his team were incredibly efficient. In less than 2 hours, they had installed 8 hidden cameras and 12 audio devices in the house. This is the receiver, Jake said as he handed him a device that looked like a regular portable hard drive. It allows to monitor in real time, and it also automatically records and saves. The cell phone app is set up too. She won't find out, will she? Not likely. These are the latest devices, smaller than a pinhole. And it's all installed in places she'll never notice. Thanks, Ryan. I've installed a tracker and panic button in your car as well. If something goes wrong, press it and my men will be there in 10 minutes. I hope I don't have to use it. I hope so too. Dude, be careful. The first day the surveillance was activated paid off. At 3 in the afternoon, Sophia assumed Ryan was in the studio, and she picked up her cell phone and dialed a number. It's me, she said. There's been a change in circumstances. He says he's going to the doctor. Ryan listened through his cell phone app, his heart racing. I know the risks, Sophia continued. But if they test the blood, they'll find out. Sophia frowned as the other man said something. No, it can't wait any longer. Either increase the dose and get it over with quickly, or go with Plan B. Plan B? Ryan gripped his cell phone tighter. An accident can certainly be arranged. That studio of his is full of dangerous tools. One slip-up and tragedy could strike. She walked to the window and looked into Ryan's studio. Give me a week. If T doesn't solve the problem, we'll create an accident. The result will be the same anyway. I get the money and you get your share. After hanging up, Sophia opens the kitchen cabinet and pulls out the box with the tea. She took out the small brown bottle again, and this time poured the liquid directly into the tea instead of waiting to add it when she made the tea. Dear Ryan, she muttered to herself over the tea leaves. You really shouldn't be this difficult. Ryan turned off his cell phone, his palms sweaty. 1 week. He only had a week. That night, he acted weaker than ever. At dinner, he purposely let his hands shake so badly that he almost knocked over his glass of water. Are you okay? Sophia asked, but her eyes were freckled. Just tired. Always tired lately. Have some tea. I'll make it stronger than usual. It'll be more effective. Ryan obediently drank most of the cup, then covered his chest, hearts beating a little fast. Is it? Let me see. She reached for his pulse. It does seem a little fast. It's probably work stress. Get some rest early. Good. In the bedroom, Ryan spits out his tea again. But this time, he left some in his mouth, letting the bitter taste remind him of what he was facing. Over the next 3 days, surveillance recorded more evidence. Sophia and her accomplice Maddox spoke on the phone twice, discussing how to move the remaining funds and how to get a quick insurance payout after Ryan's death. What about the autopsy? Maddox asked over the phone. Coroners in small towns don't get too careful. Digitalis poisoning looks like a heart attack. Besides, he'd been under a lot of stress lately and had a history of heart palpitations. The doctors can all attest to that. You're a genius. It's not my first time. Ryan got chills when he heard that. Not the first time. Meaning she'd done this before. Meaning there might be another victim somewhere. Thursday night, Ryan made a decision. He couldn't wait any longer. There was enough evidence, and it was time to end this deadly game. The first thing he did was contact Miles. I've got the recording. She admits to the poisoning. discusses the murder plan, and mentions having done it before. Send it to me. I'll contact the DA right away. Then Jake, might need your people tomorrow. Standing by. Finally, he texted Maya, thanks for saving my life. The reply came quickly, protect yourself. Friday morning, Ryan accidentally spilled his teacup. The scalding liquid spills onto the table, and Sophia rushes to get a rag to wipe it up. What a shame, she said. I'll make you another cup. No, Ryan said. I want coffee today. Sophia's expression changed. Coffee is bad for your heart. It's okay once in a while. I insist you drink tea. Her tone suddenly hardened. Why? Ryan looked her straight in the eye. Why are you so insistent? Because I care about your health. Or because of something else? Sophia narrowed her eyes. What do you mean? Nothing. It just seems strange. What's strange? Your concern for my health. Ryan stood up, especially when you add something to your tea. For a moment, panic flashed across Sophia's face. But she quickly regained her composure. I don't know what you're talking about. Digitalis, Ryan said, the toxin from Mullen. Slow but deadly. You're crazy. I tested the tea, Sophia. Or should I call you Rebecca? The name was like a slap in the face. Sophia took a step back and bumped into a cupboard. I don't know any Rebecca. 10 years ago, you used that name to approach Maya. Destroyed our marriage. Now you're back. This is ridiculous. $800,000, Ryan continued. Transferred from my account to your shell company. And the insurance policy I never signed up for. Sophia's expression changed. The mask of gentleness and virtue peeled away to reveal the true face of cold calculation beneath. You have no proof. I have recordings of your calls with Maddox, discussing how to kill me and how to divide the spoils. Oh, and you saying this isn't the first time. How dare you spy on me? Just self-defense. Sophia suddenly smiled, a smile that sent shivers down Ryan's spine. You think you've won? You don't know anything. I know enough. Do you know how many years I spent planning all this? Watching you divorce that stupid woman, biding my time, creating the perfect encounter. Do you really think the Henderson project was a coincidence? So you admit it. So what if you admit it? You recorded it? So what? You think a judge is going to believe a paranoid man who secretly spied on his wife? They'll believe the forensic evidence. What evidence? The tea? I'd say you put it in there yourself to set me up. After all, you have a history of mental problems. What history? Don't you know? For the past few months, I've been worrying about your mental state with my friends. Said you were becoming paranoid. Said you were accusing me of all sorts of ridiculous things. Even took you to a psychiatrist, remember? Ryan remembered. A month ago, Sophia had insisted that he see a doctor to relieve his stress. That doctor asked a lot of questions about anxiety and delusions. You really went to a lot of trouble. That's the difference between a professional and an amateur. Sophia gracefully sat down in her chair. Now, you have two choices. Forget all this and continue to be my husband until you die of natural causes. Or be stubborn, then I'll have to activate Plan B. An accident at the studio? Brilliant. So many chainsaws, so many possibilities for accidents. You won't get your way. I'm already getting my way. Either way, you're going to die. The difference is just the level of pain. Ryan pulled out his cell phone. Every word you just said was recorded. Sophia's face finally changed. But before she could react, the door was slammed open. The police rushed in, followed closely by Jake's security detail. Sophia Morrison, you're under arrest for attempted murder. Sophia jumped up and tried to run, but there was nowhere to run. She stared viciously at Ryan as the police handcuffed her. You ruined everything. No, Ryan said. You ruined everything. Starting 10 years ago, the house falls into an eerie silence after the police take Sophia away. Ryan sat at the dining room table and looked at the box with the tea. A few hours ago, he'd been pretending to drink the deadly poison. Now the nightmare was finally over. But it wasn't over yet. In the afternoon, police found tons of evidence in Sophia's office. Fake IDs, driver's licenses from multiple states, and a notebook with detailed records. It contained information not only about Ryan, but about several other men. At least 6 potential victims. Detective Martinez, who is in charge of the case, told Ryan, across 5 states. We're contacting other police departments. How many? 2 confirmed deaths. The cause of death was both heart problems. Right now, it looks like it's probably murder. Ryan felt a chill run down his spine. He'd almost been the third. What about Maddox Turner? Has been arrested in Nevada. He was cooperative and willing to testify against Sophia. What's her real name? Still checking. She's used so many identities that it's hard to determine which one is real. Over the next few weeks, the full picture of the case emerged. Sophia, her real name was Linda Vance, was a professional con artist and assassin. She specialized in targeting middle-aged, successful men, especially those who were recently divorced or widowed. She spends her time studying her targets, identifying their weaknesses, and then emerges as the perfect lover. Maddox Turner was her longtime partner, handling the financial side. They'd been working together for 7 years, causing at least 2 deaths and conning their way into more than $3 million. She was smart, Martinez said, using a different method, a different poison each time. If you hadn't found out, she might never have been caught. The trial began 6 months later. Ryan took the stand as the main witness. Facing the jury, he told the whole story in detail. Sophia tried to play innocent, and her attorney argued that it was all a misunderstanding and Ryan's delusion. But the evidence was overwhelming. Audio and video recordings, toxicology reports, financial records, and Maddox's testimony. The strongest evidence came from 2 other survivors. A man from Oregon testified that 5 years ago his wife suddenly started giving him a special health tea. He survived a business trip and returned to find that his wife had taken all his savings and disappeared. The photo of the wife was of a young Sophia. Another witness came from Arizona. His brother had died of a heart attack 3 years earlier and had just married a woman named Catherine. Catherine disappeared after the funeral, taking all the old man's inheritance with her. Surveillance footage shows that Catherine is none other than Sophia. The defendant is a cold-blooded predator, the prosecutor said in closing arguments, who has made a career out of murder and treats human life like an ATM. The jury took only 2 hours to reach a verdict, guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced Sophia to life in prison without parole. When the verdict was read, Sophia lost control for the first time. She screamed that it wasn't fair, that Ryan had ruined her life. "You've ruined a lot of lives," the judge said coldly. "And now it's your turn to pay the price." Sophia looked back at Ryan one last time as she was taken away. There was hate in those eyes, resentment, but more than anything else, disbelief. She really didn't seem to understand why she had failed. Ryan didn't say anything. He'd said enough. When he left the courthouse, Maya was waiting for him outside. "It's over," she said. "Yeah. How do you feel?" Ryan thought for a moment, relieved, but also empty. "It's going to be okay." "Maya, I'm sorry. Why are you apologizing? If I had believed in you more, if I had tried harder to save our marriage." "Don't," Maya interrupted. "It's not your fault. It's not entirely my fault either. It was her fault. But the years we lost. It's over." Maya touched his hand gently. "The important thing is that you survived. You stopped her, without your warning. You would have figured it out. You're stronger than she thinks." They stood in front of the courthouse, looking out over the city's traffic. 10 years ago, their marriage ended in this city. Now, the nightmare ended here, too. "Take care, Ryan. You too." Maya turned away and disappeared into the crowd. Ryan knew they wouldn't get back together. Some things once broken can't be fixed. But at least, the truth came out. Back at home, Ryan started packing Sophia's things. Clothes, jewelry, makeup, all traces of what she left behind had to be removed. Deep in her dresser drawer, he found a diary. Turning to the first page, it reads, "Target, Ryan Braxton. Net worth, about $2 million. Weaknesses, recently divorced, lonely, easily trusting. Plan, approach through Henderson program, play ideal partner, within 6 to 12 months." Followed by a detailed observation log. His routine, eating habits, social circles. She even recorded every word he said about Maya, analyzing how to exploit his guilt. What shocked Ryan the most was the last page. "Are is more difficult than expected. May need to up the dosage. If tea doesn't work, consider creating an accident. The studio is the best place. Note, next target identified. Thomas Chun of Seattle, recently widowed, $3 million plus in assets." Ryan closed her journal. Even after being caught, she was still planning her next victim. Can someone like that really be considered human? The phone rings. It's Marley. "The money's been recovered," she said. "Most of it's still there. Keep it for evidence." "Ryan, That's your money. I don't want money stolen like that. Give it to the Victims Assistance Fund. Are you sure? Sure. I just want to start over. Hanging up the phone, Ryan walked into the studio. Sunlight shone through the windows on his unfinished work. A dining room table, originally intended for a home that would never exist. He picked up the sandpaper and began to sand. The wood gradually smooths under his hands, just as time will smooth out all wounds. Outside the window, the Boise sky was blue. Life goes on, and Ryan Braxton, at last, was free. That's the end of today's story. For more captivating tales, hit subscribe and never miss an episode.